Imagine sitting in a courtroom, the weight of someone's future resting squarely on your shoulders. You've listened to days, perhaps weeks of testimony, seen countless pieces of evidence, and heard passionate arguments from both sides. Now, it's time to decide. How do you, or any juror, sift through all that complexity to arrive at a verdict? Is it purely a logical assessment of facts, or are there hidden currents at play, silently shaping judgment? For centuries, the jury system has been lauded as a cornerstone of justice, a group of ordinary citizens bringing their collective wisdom to bear on critical legal questions. But beneath this ideal lies a fascinating, intricate reality. Jury decision-making isn't just a clinical process of fact-finding, it's profoundly human. It's a journey influenced by our individual psychology, the stories we tell ourselves, and the mental shortcuts we all use to make sense of a complex world. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this intricate process, exploring the subtle biases, the powerful narratives, and the cognitive shortcuts that shape how justice is ultimately rendered. Our goal isn't to judge, but to understand, to appreciate the immense challenge and responsibility that comes with being a juror. Let's begin with something deeply ingrained in all of us: cognitive biases. These aren't intentional prejudices, but rather systematic patterns of deviation from rationality and judgment. They're like built-in filters that unconsciously skew how we interpret information. Think about confirmation bias. Once we form an initial idea, even a faint one, we naturally tend to favor information that confirms it and discount anything that contradicts it. In a trial, a juror might subtly give more weight to testimony that aligns with their early impression of guilt or innocence. Then there's hindsight bias, where events that have already happened seem more predictable than they actually were. After a verdict, it might feel obvious who was guilty, but in the thick of the trial, it was far from clear. And we can't ignore implicit biases. These are unconscious associations we hold about certain groups or appearances, associations that can subtly influence our judgments of credibility or character, often without us even realizing it. A witness who fits a certain stereotype might be perceived differently, even if all other factors are equal. This isn't about being a bad person, it's about the automatic workings of our minds. Another common one is anchoring bias. This occurs when we over-rely on the very first piece of information we hear. For example, if a prosecution's opening statement puts a specific number on damages, that number might anchor the jury's subsequent deliberations, even if later evidence suggests a different figure. These biases are powerful because they operate beneath the surface, making impartiality a far greater challenge than it might appear. Now, imagine the sheer volume of information presented in a trial: hundreds of pages of documents, dozens of hours of testimony, complex legal jargon. Our brains aren't designed to process all that raw data perfectly, so we rely on what psychologists call heuristics, or mental shortcuts. These are incredibly useful for navigating daily life, but in the courtroom, they can sometimes lead us astray. Consider the representative heuristic. We often judge the likelihood of something by how well it matches a prototype or stereotype. If a defendant looks like what we imagine a criminal to look like, we might unconsciously deem them more likely to be guilty, even without concrete evidence. The availability heuristic comes into play when we judge the frequency or likelihood of an event by how easily examples come to mind. If a juror has recently seen a news report about a similar crime, they might unconsciously rate the current crime as more probable or severe.
And the affect heuristic means we let our emotions guide our decisions. If a witness or defendant evokes a strong positive or negative feeling in us, that feeling can influence our judgment of their credibility or guilt, regardless of the objective facts. These shortcuts help us manage cognitive load, but they also introduce a layer of human fallibility into the pursuit of justice. Perhaps one of the most fundamental ways we make sense of the world, and certainly a courtroom, is through storytelling. Jurors don't just passively collect facts, they actively construct coherent narratives or stories from the evidence presented. This is often referred to as the story model of juror decision-making. Think about it. When you hear a series of events, your mind naturally tries to weave them into a cause and effect sequence. This happened, then that happened, therefore this must be the reason. Jurors instinctively test these self-created narratives against each other, favoring the one that makes the most sense, the one with the fewest gaps, and the one that feels most complete and coherent. Attorneys are acutely aware of this. Their entire strategy often revolves around crafting a compelling narrative for their side, presenting evidence in a way that helps the jury build their desired story. The prosecution tells one story, the defense tells another, and the jury's task is to decide which story best explains the evidence and aligns with the law. This isn't about fiction, it's about finding the most plausible truth within the presented facts. While individual psychology is crucial, jury decision-making isn't a solitary act. It's a group process, and it's also influenced by a host of external factors. Consider pre-trial publicity. Media coverage before a trial can plant ideas or shape opinions, making it harder for jurors to come in with a truly blank slate. Then there are the jury instructions from the judge, which can be incredibly complex. Jurors often struggle to fully grasp intricate legal concepts or the precise meaning of reasonable doubt, despite their best efforts. The nature of the evidence itself also matters. Highly complex scientific testimony can be challenging for lay people to evaluate, sometimes leading to reliance on the expert's perceived authority rather than the science itself. Even the demographics of the jurors, their backgrounds, experiences, and cultural perspectives can subtly influence how they interpret the evidence. To address some of these challenges, we have jury selection, or voir dire. This process aims to identify and remove potential jurors with overt biases. More advanced methods, sometimes called scientific jury selection, use tools like questionnaires to understand predispositions better. The goal is not to stack the jury, but to seat one that can be as impartial as possible, though the ethics of trying to pick a favorable jury are a constant debate. Once the evidence is presented, the jury moves to deliberations. Here, group dynamics take over. Phenomena like group polarization can occur, where the group's initial inclination becomes more extreme after discussion. The majority effect means that smaller factions can be swayed by larger ones. Through deliberation, jurors collectively build a master narrative, weaving together not just the trial information, but also their own common sense understandings and personal experiences. So, who are the key players navigating this complex landscape? Of course, there are the jurors themselves, bearing the immense responsibility. Then the attorneys, prosecution and defense, strategically presenting their cases. The judges ensure fairness and instruct the juries. And behind the scenes, academic researchers like Dr. Itiel Dror and Stephen D. Penrod tirelessly study these phenomena, while jury consultants apply behavioral science to assist attorneys. The broader legal systems constantly strive to balance human fallibility with the ideals of justice.
This inherent human element leads to crucial debates. How effectively can judicial instructions truly counteract deeply ingrained cognitive biases? Does group deliberation really average out individual biases, or can it amplify them? There's a fundamental tension between achieving a verdict that reflects objective truth, accuracy, and one reached without undue bias, fairness. Which ideal should take precedence? The ethics of scientific jury selection remain a hot topic. Questioning whether using behavioral science to pick favorable jurors undermines the ideal of a truly representative jury. And how do we ensure jurors fully grasp complex scientific evidence, especially with the CSI effect, where popular culture creates unrealistic expectations about forensic evidence? Even judges, despite their expertise, aren't immune to biases, adding another layer of complexity. And the use of peremptory challenges, where potential jurors can be dismissed without explanation, continues to spark debate about potential discrimination. Understanding how juries decide is truly a journey into the heart of human cognition and societal justice. It reminds us that justice, while an ideal, is always administered by people, with all their strengths and their inherent limitations. The process is far more nuanced than a simple weighing of facts. It's a complex interplay of unconscious biases, efficient mental shortcuts, and the powerful human need to construct a coherent story. But this isn't a reason for cynicism. It's a call for deeper understanding and continuous improvement. The future of justice will undoubtedly involve ongoing research into these psychological forces. We'll see efforts to develop even more effective strategies for bias mitigation, perhaps through innovative jury instructions or clearer communication methods for complex evidence. We'll continue to explore the intricate dynamics of group deliberation, how to harness its wisdom while guarding against its pitfalls. The goal is to refine our systems, to bridge the gap between human fallibility and the profound aspiration for fairness and accuracy.
By acknowledging these psychological realities, we can better appreciate the immense responsibility placed on jurors and work towards a legal system that strives ever closer to its ideal, a system where every verdict is not just a decision, but a fair and informed one.